Hey guys, and welcome back to another Django tutorial. So in today's video, what we're going to be doing is talking a bit about forms. Now, forms are essential to any website. An example of a form is something like a login form or a create new account form, or maybe a create new to-do list for our example here. So what we're going to be doing today is just making a form that will allow us to create a new to-do list. And then in the next video, we will create a more advanced form that will allow us to add items to our existing to-do list. So I want to make a way essentially right now that we can create a new to-do list without having to use the command prompt. I just want to create a web page that'll allow us to do that. So what I'm going to do is create a new page on our website called create that will allow us when we go there to create a new page using a form. So what I'm going to do is start by setting up a path to that page, creating a new template, and then we will work on the actual form itself. So in this case, I'm just going to say that create will be where we want to go. And then we'll say views.create and we'll name it create like that. I think I can probably just put create like that too, but whatever, that's fine. Okay, so now that we've done that, let's go into our views file. Let's create a new function. We'll say define create. We'll say response like that. And then in here, we're just going to return this same thing. But we'll just change the file name to be create.html and we'll create that file right now. So we go inside of our main file here. I'm just going through this quickly because we've already essentially done this a bunch of times. I'm going to extend, so this extends, and in this case main/base.html, and then we will have to do those blocks, or we don't have to, but we will do those blocks. So in this case, block title, and we'll just call this create new list, and then we will end the block like that. And I'm just going to copy this and put it down here, but just change the name of the block to be content like that. Okay, so now I'll save this as, what do we want, create.html, and we have created the template for our create page. So in here I'll just say create page, and we will add the form content into here afterwards. So now that we've done that, we should have a page on our website, essentially that when we go to create, it'll bring us to this HTML page, which extends obviously our base.html. And to give you a reminder, this is what our base.html file looks like. Okay, so what we need to do now is actually create a form that will show up on our create page. Now, when you create forms, most of you are probably used to doing something like this, where you go in the HTML and you actually code the form yourself. So for example, you do form, you're going to say method equals, maybe we're going to say post in this case, and I'll talk about the different methods in a second. You're going to say action equals, and in this case, we're going to go back to the same page, and then maybe you make a button, and that button is type equals submit. Maybe it has a name equals like save or something, and then you end the button and maybe you do something like that. So this is an example. I'm just doing this because we're actually going to need to do this, but you guys get the idea that this is typically how you create a form. And then above all of this, you're going to do all of the different fields in your form. So for example, if you've got a username and password, you do an input field for username, input field for password, you give them some labels, some names, all that kind of fun stuff. Now Django makes this a lot easier because all we actually have to do is pass in a variable called form, and Django will actually generate the HTML for the form that we create for us. Now this makes no sense right now because we haven't created a form yet, but what we're going to be doing is passing a form object. So we'll create our own form class and we'll create an instance of that and pass it into our HTML, and it'll generate the HTML for those form fields for us. So for example, if we had username and password, this is all like whatever form we pass in here will automatically be generated for us. And you guys will see how that works in a second. The only thing that we need to do when we're creating a form is make these form tags like this, and then add a submit button that will submit the form for us. That's all we have to do. So now we actually need to create the form. So this will start making sense now. What we're going to do is make a new file inside of our main application directory, and we're going to call it forms.py. So let's save this as forms.py, make sure we're in the right directory. And what we're going to do at the top here, we're going to say from Django import forms. And now we're going to create a class, and this class is going to be called whatever we want our form to be called, and it will define the attributes and the fields in our form. So I'm going to call mine create new list, and in here we're going to inherit from forms.form, which will allow us essentially to have the form automatically generated for us and to do a lot of cool stuff, which we'll talk about later. So I'm going to set now the fields for my form. Now these fields are the exact same as the fields in your database. So for example, like Boolean field, integer field, anything like that. But so the way we do it essentially is we say forms dot, in this case, I want a character field for my name. So I'll say character field or char field. And then in here, I need to give it an optional argument, or I don't need to then, but I can give it an optional argument of label, which will be what shows up before the little box so that it, you know, we know what we're typing in here. And then we can give it a max underscore length as well, which I believe is required. And I'm just going to set this equal to 200 characters because that's probably all we need. So essentially, all we're doing when we create a form is we're just going to list all of the different attributes that we want for our form as class variables underneath the class. So if I wanted another attribute that maybe was like a check button or something like that, what I can do is I could say like check equals forms dot Boolean field like this, and that's all I have to do. And now when I pass this form into Django, it'll automatically create not only a name, what do you call it? A name character field, so like text input. It'll also create a Boolean field, which will be like a check button. And then we could do other kinds of fields as well. And if you want to know all the different types, I'll leave a link here in the description to all of these different kind of fields that you can use. Okay, so that's how we create a form. If you wanted to create another form, same thing. You would make another class and do all of the different attributes you want in that form. And we'll get a bit more advanced with it actually in the next video as well. So anyways, now we've created a form. So let's go back to this views.py file, and let's now actually pass this form into our create.html. So we're obviously going to need a variable called form here, and we're going to have to pass that in. So what I need to do now is I need to create an instance of this form and pass it to my HTML. So to do that, I have to start by importing that. So, I already imported it here. But anyways, just do from.forms, import, and then the name of your form. So in my case, create new list. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say form equals create new list like this. Now what this will do is create a blank form, and we will pass that into our HTML, and it will know what to do with it and generate the form for us on that create page. So let me show you this working in action now. So I'm just going to run my server. I'm sure you guys know how to do this by now. And if I go to this link here, actually, and I go to /create, you can see that now we get to create new page. You can see that we have a name, we have a check button, and we have this create new button. So that button was the button that I created, but this name field we didn't make, this check button we didn't make. Django automatically generated that for us. Now, notice that obviously these don't look great. We want to add some HTML to them. We want to add some CSS. We want to do all kinds of stuff. I'm going to show you how we can do that later. But just know that Django is capable of automatically generating all of the HTML for your forms. So before I go any further into how we're actually going to get information from this form, because right now we're not actually doing that, and it's not going to work if we actually try to submit this form, I will show you how we can look at the form in a different way. So for example, if we go to create.html here, there's a few default layouts for our form. So we have as_table, which is what is actually showing for us right now. But we also have as_p, which will mean that the form will go like vertically down. So all of the items will keep going down. And then we have as_ul, which means the form is going to show up on little dots, like as a list item. So these are a few different ways that we can show the form just looking like a little bit different. So if I do as p, for example, I believe we're running the server right now, and I go here and refresh, you can see that now it looks a little bit nicer in terms of we have the name and then we have the checkbox, and they're just right after each other in new paragraphs. Now I just want to show you that if I try to hit this button, notice that we get this little please fill out this field, nice looking JavaScript actually pops up. Now, the reason this does this is because Django is generating the form and the HTML for us. If we had created our own form, we wouldn't see this nice pop-up text, right? So that's one of the advantages of using the Django built-in forms, although I will show you kind of some of the limitations you may have with that. Now, if I hit this checkbox, same thing, you can see even when I'm hovering over it, we get like, please check this box if you want to proceed, like stuff like that, right? Now notice that if I type something in here and I hit create new, it says, please check this box. Well, this box might be an optional checkbox. If we want to make this not a required field, then what we can simply do to do that is go into our forms, and inside Boolean field here, we can say required equals false. And now if I refresh the website here, you see when I hovered, it's not saying anything. And if I type like something in here and hit create new, it will work. Now I'll show you what happens right now when I do this and how we can fix this. So when I do this, it says we get a CSRF verification failed. Now that is because whenever we're creating a form inside of our HTML, we need to actually add these tags, and I'm about to show you. So essentially we need to just do CSRF underscore token every time that we create a new form inside of Django. This just needs to go inside of our form tags. Don't ask me why, because I honestly don't really know. It's something to do with security in terms of like verification and validation and stuff. So just put that in here whenever you create a form, so when you try to submit it, you don't run into any issues. Okay, so now that we've done that, it's time to actually start creating new to-do lists based on what the user types in. So now it's time to talk about the difference between post and get requests. So if I'm gonna I'll go to views.py for right now, and we need to talk about post and get. So there's two different ways to send information to the server, and that's essentially what our form is doing. When we hit submit, what's going to happen is it's going to save all of that information that was in our form. It's going to bundle it up in some kind of way and send it to the server. Now there's two main ways of doing this, post and get. Now the reason they have two different ways is because there's two different functions for each of them. Technically you can do anything with get that you can do with post, but they have different security reasons behind them. So for post you're going to want to use post essentially whenever you're doing something that's kind of secret. So for example, getting a user's password, if you're sending that to the server, it needs to be encrypted, because otherwise if it's not, then other people can very easily see the password and change it and do all kinds of stuff. So you're going to use post whenever you're essentially doing anything that's kind of secret, or the information needs to be encrypted when it's sent to the server. Now you also use post whenever you're making any modifications to like the database or anything like that. You use get when you're just trying to simply like retrieve information. So for example, say I type in like the ID of the, the to-do list I want to get. Well, we could get that using a get request, not a post request, because everyone can see what the ID of the to-do list is. That's fine. We don't care about that information. What actually happens when you use get is all of the information that you type in the form gets pasted in the URL. So when it goes to the next page, it just simply reads the URL and gets that information. Whereas post actually hides the information, encrypts it, and sends it to the server. Now I'm oversimplifying exactly how these work, but I want to make sure you guys understand the difference between post and get. If you're unsure, just use post, but the reason you would use get over post is, for example, say you want to bookmark like a search result or something, or you want to save some information, which is a specific URL, then you would use get because, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of a good example. If you ever go to any links, like let's go to YouTube, for example, and then youtube.com/ and in this case I say like search equals tech with Tim. You ever see something that looks like this? This is what's known as a get request, where the information that the user typed in this case it would have been in the search bar for the YouTube, gets pasted in the URL, and then if you hit this, I don't think this is going to work because this is obviously not the way you search for something on YouTube, but it just gives you that page, right? Whereas if I'm going to be typing in my password, it's not going to save the password up in this bar because it's going to use a post request. And obviously, the reason we'd use this get request is because maybe we want to save these search results and bookmark them, and we wouldn't be able to do that if we're using a post request. So anyways, that is how post and get works. I'm sure you guys are already confused. If you have any questions, let me know, but I'm trying to explain it as best as I can. So anyways, when we use this, this create window or this create page, we are going to use a post request because we want to encrypt the name of the the to-do list that you are creating. And because we're going to be modifying the database, we need to use a post request. So anyways, all we have to do, we don't have to touch anything in here because we've already set that the method is going to be post. But what happens when we have post and get requests is they are actually passed through this variable to our view. So our view knows or can tell based on this variable here whether or not we are trying to post something or we're trying to get something when we access this page. So to check this, if we've passed a post request or a get request, what we do is we say if response dot method equals, and in this case post. And this will tell us if we are trying to make changes. We're passing information from the form back to this page. So if we are posting, we're going to be doing something different than if we are getting. So those are the two requests, right? Post or get. By default, it's always get, but whenever you're changing something, you're going to use post. So anyways, we're using post now. So if we're using post, what we need to do is the following. We have to say form equals create new list, but in here, what we're going to do is we're going to say response dot post. Now what this does and what this is holding is all of the information from our from our form. So essentially when we get this response.post, it's going to contain a dictionary that has all of the IDs of all of our different attributes, all of our different inputs, and it's going to save the values that you typed in them. So when you pass this to create new list, what it's going to do is create a new form that has those values populated in them. So by default, right, if we go to forms, you can see that we don't have any default value for the character field or for the Boolean field. So what's going to happen is it's going to automatically set those values to what is received here, and then we can start doing things with this form and validating it and creating a new to-do list. So now that we've created this form, what we'll do is we'll say, here? We're going to say if form.is_valid. What we'll do in here is now we will create a new to-do list and add that with the name that was given to us. So we're going to say t equals and then to-do list, and we'll say name equals, in this case, we'll say n up here, we'll say n equals form.cleaned_data name. Now, I'll talk about what this is doing. So essentially, our form is going to take this post, and it's going to get all the data from the form, and then we're able to access that data by just using it like a dictionary. So you do .cleaned_data, just going to clean up the data for you, unencrypt it, and then what you do is you type the name of whatever the field that you want. So in this case, we named ours name, so we use name, and then we can get that data, and we can use it to create a new to-do list, and then save that to-do list like that. And that is all we need to do now, so that when we use this form, every time we type in a name that's valid, it creates a new to-do list. Now this might be a little bit confusing, but I hope you guys kind of understand it. This is valid method is automatically created and exists because of the fact that we're inheriting from forms.form. And this thing is amazing, and what it does is just automatically checks all of the fields that you've defined to make sure that they have valid input. If they do, then this is valid, will return true. If they don't, it will return false. And obviously you were seeing that it was telling us what was wrong with all of the different fields when it was incorrect. So let's go back to create now. Let's click, I might have to rerun the server here. We'll see. Save this, save all this stuff. And I think that updated. Anyways, we'll check here quickly. So I go back to create. You can see now that we have create page, we have name, and we have a checkbox. So let's now do like create a new to-do list called Tim. Let's say create new. And what will happen now is essentially we have created a new to-do list called Tim. Now you might not actually be able, you can't tell that we've done that, but that is precisely what we've done. Now we can create more to-do lists. So we can say like new to-do list Tim. We could say like Joe, create that. And that has created a new to-do list for us. So now let's actually show that to-do list right after we create it. So for right now, all we're doing is just returning the form with whatever information we passed in it. But what we can do is we can say that, all right, if we're saying response is post, instead of returning that form that has the name of the to-do list we just created, let's redirect to that to-do list so you can see what it looks like. So to do that, what we can say is we can say return HTTP, and instead of saying response this time, we will say HTTP and then response redirect. If I can get my capitals working here, redirect like that. And then in here, all we have to do is put the page we want to go to. So in this case, I'm going to say slash and then I, like %I. And I'm going to say percent. And in this case, I'm going to say t.id, which will be the ID of the to-do list we want to go to. Now I also just have to import this HTTP response. So I'll do it up here. So from django.http, import HTTP response redirect. And now what will happen is instead of returning this form and returning the main.createHTML page, we will redirect to the page that we've defined here, which will be the ID of the to-do list we just created. So now this should have updated. It did. So let's try this again with Joe. We say create new, and we are redirected to the page that displays Joe to us, right? And that is essentially how that works. So that is the way that you create a form. If we wanted to, let's say, get more information from the form, what we could do is print out, like if the checkbox was hit or not. Like we can do all kinds of stuff. You can obviously create more than one form by doing multiple forms in here. You can have more than one form on each page with different submit buttons, all that kind of stuff. In the next video, I'll talk about creating custom forms, so modifying some stuff, maybe making some things look better. And then in future videos, we're going to be adding Bootstrap to our website. We're going to be doing login forms, all this kind of stuff. So if you guys don't get it now, we will be going over more of it in the future, but these are just kind of the basics of Django Forms.